time he's been in Congress. We've spent a bunch of time together. We have hiked together about every year. I don't think we're going to make our hike this summer until after the primary, but we hiked together about this time last year. Those hikes started with, and that one I missed, but like 8-hour hike up Timpanogos. That was open to the public, and it happened to be mostly CCL members who attended. Last year in Provo Canyon, I watched the congressman handle a heckler, who I think was not entirely all there. But the congressman handled this person with a grace that I can only aspire to. We were all ready to do we need to physically step in here? And he just talked to him like a human being, like all of us would want to have the ability to do, and the situation went away. So I've seen him in any number of those situations. Most recently this week when he had a confrontational question by somebody who just didn't want to accept climate science at all. And again, he handled that with a grace that I can only aspire to. So I learned from the best, and we have with us today one of the best.
So I went and grabbed the microphone because I just couldn't see myself standing behind that roster. And I'm tempted. We'll see where I end up by the time I'm done. Listen, I can't tell you how pleased I am to be here. And I just got to tell you this fun little thing. Last night I thought, oh, I didn't ever ask about dress code. I really want to wear Levi's. And I almost reached out to Tom. And then as I'm driving up here, I'm thinking, have I ever seen Tom not in Levi's? But here I am. So listen, I just want you to know there's so much I want to share. I think my head literally will explode. I have some notes, and we're going to kind of talk about through my notes and just talk generally, and then see if we can do a few Q&A right before this is over. Is that okay with everybody? So I want to start. I don't even know where to set this because it's all my notes, and I'll have a bunch of things I want to share. So I may go back to the notes, but we're just going to try this. I want to start. Tom mentioned I had a heckler in a meeting, and I think one of the few times that you actually didn't see me was another meeting I had, and I spent about 20 minutes talking about my philosophy on climate, environment, why Republicans should engage, and I thought I was just brilliant, right? And had done a good job, and I was sensing good vibes from everybody in the crowd. And one gentleman raised his hand, and he said, this is just such a hoax. What are we going to do about this? And he went on and on and on. And then he said, I know what we should do. Well, let's have a debate. And we'll debate that the climate's changing and that it's not claiming, and we'll solve this once and for all. And I looked at him and I said, I think if we had that debate, we wouldn't change a single mind. Is that fair? How many of you have found yourselves in these very frustrating conversations? You're all not in your, yeah, right? Yeah, you're all not in your head. It's like, this is so clear, right? And to so many people. And so I thought I'd talk for just a little bit this morning about how we can handle that situation a little bit better. Does that make sense? And how we can get people on board. And to do that, I want to tell you a little bit about myself, because I think I'm one of those that probably frustrated a lot of you or would have frustrated a lot of you over time. And yet here I am speaking to you. And so let me talk a little bit about what I would call a journey for most of us, and how we help people make that journey and take that journey and have a good experience on that journey. The hike that Tom referred to was 7-ish years ago. Some of you in this room were on that hike. And I remember a very, to me, stop my brain moment, because I had just been the mayor of Provo. We had done what we called the Provo Clean Air Toolkit. I had been recognized by an organization for my work on clean air. I was really proud of it. And I don't remember who it was, but somebody on that hike said to me, but what are you doing about carbon? And I had nothing, right? Like, because everything in Utah, this was 7 years ago, was all about clean air and nothing was really about carbon. Is that fair? And yet when I went to Washington, D.C., guess what? It was exactly flipped. Nobody was talking about clean air. They were all talking about carbon. And I found myself very much at a loss. So I started what I would call a journey on this. True story, if asked in a town hall meeting, if the climate was changing and the man had an influence on it, you know what I did? I did what all my other Republican colleagues did. I kind of looked at my shoes and and then came up with an answer that had really nothing to do with the question. And I thought I was brilliant, right? And everybody else that had asked me the question was very frustrated with me. And so I started trying to explore that question. The reason I share that with you is because, okay, this is John, right? 7 years ago, I would not answer that question. And it made me very uncomfortable. And some of you have heard me say this, so indulge me if you've already heard this, but have any of you been to a timeshare presentation? Yeah, those of you that laughed have been, right? And so let me explain what that has to do with Republicans and climate. And I'll just say, let's not use the word Republican. Let's just say those who are struggling with climate, right? So in a timeshare presentation, I would be across from somebody who is highly paid, highly skilled, highly motivated to get me to do something I shouldn't do, right? Fair enough? And they're very good at it. And so they start down a pathway and they ask you these questions and they're leading you into this place, right? And they might say to me, Mr. Curtis, do you love your kids? And you know what I'm going to say? No. Because the next question is, then why wouldn't you buy this timeshare, right? Because they've taken, and so so many people who struggle with climate feel that same way. Is it climate changing and has man influenced it? No, they don't know the science. They don't understand the science. They even if they spend a lot of time with it, they're still not going to understand it. It's that the next question is, then why won't you support the Green New Deal? In my opinion, that's what they're saying no to. Does that make sense? And so how do we change that dynamic? How do we take away what it feels like a timeshare presentation to get something very comfortable? Now, several years ago, Laura, you can help me. I think it was 2021. I invited, I knew that I wanted to do something on this. I didn't know what it was. So I invited all my House Republicans to Utah to talk about climate. And the staff said, oh, this is great. We'll get 5 or 6 out to Utah to talk about climate. 25 House Republicans signed up to Utah to come talk about climate. But some of them actually said, if the press finds out about this, I won't go. That's the uncomfortable level of this. And so going from 2021 to today, where there are 85 House Republicans that are part of the Conservative Climate Caucus, and the first tenet in that caucus is that the climate's changing and Matt's had some influence on it. Like, how does that happen? And this is what I think, if there is any secret, I want to share just a couple of secrets with you. Does that make sense? About how we get from there to here. And by the way, all of you may not know this, but you're very good at what I'm going to tell you. And that is the way that you accept people. And so this is part of it, right? Like, accept people wherever they are on what I would call the climate continuum. So when I was new at this, I was fortunate to meet people like you who, when I said, yeah, I changed my light bulbs to LED, yes, that's great, good job, right? That's awesome. And instead, you know what we do to most people? That's all, right? That's all you did was change your light bulbs, right? And so people have this like turnoff, right? Like, I can never please you, right? I can never do enough. And I think that's one of the problems with this whole issue is most people feel like there is no point at which you have done enough. And we do that to corporations, right? Corporations will put solar on their roof and they'll do this and they'll do that. And then we'll say, yeah, but what about this, right? And we just never really stop and celebrate what people have done. And this continuum, my experience is that no matter where they are on this continuum, so let's go all the way over from here from it's a hoax to all the way over here of like I'm all in, right? This continuum is, my experience is the more time they spend in a comfortable environment dealing with these issues, the more comfortable they are moving along this continuum. And if there's any pain along there, they stop, right? And this is where I think a lot of people go wrong, is they inflict pain. We have to move you along this continuum, and the best way to do that is to scare you, to frighten you, to threaten you. Does that make sense? I have I have a couple grandkids staying with me for a couple of days. And those of you with grandkids will appreciate this. Like, I'm seriously trying to install my version of discipline on kids I get in front of me 2 or 3 hours a month, right? I'm like, how's it going, John? So last night, my little 3-year-old takes all the rocks out of the garden and throws them on the trampoline. And Papa's going to fix this, right? Like, okay, James, put those rocks back in the garden. So I'm going to inflict pain. James, put those rocks back, right? And I just keep elevating, right? And guess what? Papa put the rocks back in the garden. James wouldn't do it. And this is human nature, right? We're not going to force people. We're not going to shame them. We're not going to lecture them on science and get them to move. And you know, if there's any scientists in the room, I'm just going to apologize right up front. I don't mean to demean like what you do, but putting the facts in front of people never really has changed people's minds. Does that make sense? It should. I don't disagree with that, but the reality of it is, let me just tell you how I like to approach this. And as some of you know, I've probably in this last year, I've held about a dozen meetings in my home. I invite the most far-right people I can find. I feed them dinner, and then we get into a very comfortable environment. We talk about this. And one of my questions is, how many of you would like to leave the earth better than you found it? I've never found anybody, right, who doesn't want to do that. The next question is less pollution better than more pollution? Yes, it is. Boom, we're done, right? We're done, right? Now we can talk about, well, how do we make that happen in a very non-threatening way? And this is why, like, I don't even I never really even spend much time on the question of the science, because the scientist, I don't want to offend you, it doesn't matter to me. What matters to me is I want to leave the earth better than I found it, and less pollution is better than more pollution. Now, how do we do that? What methods can we agree on? Most people, most conservatives, most Republicans feel like the only options in front of them destroy our economy. You've heard this, right? Leave us energy dependent on other people, cause prices to go up, cause reliability to go down. And like, if that was your choice, how many of you are in, right? Like, that's what they feel like, right, is the choice. So now for a minute, let's just switch gears to something that's also very important in this conversation, and that is how much we all agree on what our energy future should be. Would it shock you to know there is a whole lot more we agree on than we disagree? So can I give you some examples? Renewables. Republicans don't hate renewables. Now, if you tell them that you're going to run the whole world only on renewables, guess what? They'll push back. Does that surprise anybody, right? But if you talk about renewables being a very important piece of the puzzle, they're in, and they agree with that. A huge category where we agree. What about emerging technologies, hydrogen, fusion, the myriad of things that people show me all the time, this amazing innovation? That's very, like, who's going to disagree with that, right? We agree on all of that. Nuclear. I like to tease my Democratic colleagues. When I went to Washington 7 years ago, if I could catch them in an elevator with nobody else there, they would agree that nuclear was part of our future, but they didn't want to do it publicly, right? Today, this is a very bipartisan issue. And you know, I'll be the first to say, look, there's a couple of issues with nuclear we should not ignore: storage and safety, right? I'm not saying that it's just carte blanche, but there's a lot of agreement around nuclear where we can all agree about our energy future. Well, we've just covered about most of the energy sources. Now there is this one little thing, this fossil fuel thing, right, where we're just going to have some disagreements. And if I could just touch on that for a minute and tell you that part of my district that I represent is Carbon County. I love to go to Washington, and I say with a smile to my Democratic colleagues, I represent Carbon County. What do you think they do in Carbon County? And would it surprise anyone that if you or anyone you loved were presented with something that said you must give up your livelihood, you must give up your not just your way of life, but the way of life of your children and those that came before you. You have to do that. How many of you feel like you might push back no matter what it is, right? And so the very, very good people in Carbon County and Emery County and the Basin have felt attacked and have felt people coming after them and wanting to take away their livelihood and their way of life. And so should anybody be surprised that, right, this is what they do when that's the case? And yet something that I discovered as I got to know these very, very good people better and better and better is they're very smart. They can see what's happening in the world, right? They can see that you put government aside, the market is still moving towards cleaner and cleaner fuel and cleaner energy choices. And they know that, they see that, they want to be part of it. And so the difference between going to Carbon County and saying you're bad people and what you produce is bad and it's going to cause all sorts of problems, and saying, look, you can actually be part of our energy future. Let's figure this out. You're on the team. They want to be on the team. And they actually have some very important things that the world needs. Imagine this. They're hard workers. They're smart. The industry employs some of the best engineers and scientists in the world, and they are highly motivated to be relevant into the future. What does that mean? They know that the world is going to want cleaner and cleaner fuel. They want to be a part of that. So why should we count them out if they feel like they should be in the game getting fossil fuels to be cleaner and cleaner and cleaner, right? If we counted out solar, so wait, let me pause for just a minute. You heard me say this, a lot of you. I think three things are going to determine our energy future in 2050. Affordability, reliability, and clean. So just for a minute, I'm going to deviate for a little bit. Let's talk about Europe for just a minute. Did Europe make some mistakes? In my opinion, yes. They went all in for clean and abandoned affordability and reliability. And today, they're buying dirty fossil fuels from an enemy in many cases. They're burning a lot of coal. Affordability matters. Reliability matters. Now, some of my colleagues, my people who, for lack of a better term, are drill baby drill, they want to forget clean. Well, clean matters, right? The market is driving clean. It's affordable, reliable, clean. So now let's go to Carbon County and Emery County and say, look, the goal is affordable, reliable, and clean. And if we go to any of those energy sources that we mentioned, they all have an Achilles heel. For instance, renewables. Until we get batteries, or not batteries, storage figured out, renewables have an Achilles heel in reliability. Fair enough? I love the renewable industry, but that's something that they want to work on so that they're more and more viable. And the more storage capacity and the lower the price for storage, the more viable of renewables. Fair enough? Nuclear, what's its Achilles heel? Cost, right? It's too expensive. And fossil fuels, what's their Achilles heel? Clean. So what if they can fix that? What if direct air capture, carbon sequestration deals with that? Should we rule them out of the game any more than we should rule renewables out of the game because they don't have storage figured out? And the answer is, if we're smart and we want affordable, reliable, clean energy, we should count everybody in the game. And we should say, it's a race, go, right? Affordable, reliable, clean. Who gets to 2050 with affordable, reliable, clean will actually be the major source of our energy, in my opinion. I also believe in 2050, we're actually going to need all the affordable, reliable, clean energy we can get. And so we need everybody in the game. Can anybody chart a course to a clean 2050 without nuclear? Not with today's technology, maybe fusion, right? Maybe something comes along. And if we're honest, all of the energy experts in the world will tell us we'll be using fossil fuels in 2050, if we're honest. So why not bring them in as partners, help them accomplish their goal of affordable, reliable, and clean, and cheer them on, right? Does that make sense? And guess what? That's a very comfortable place for a lot of people like me that represent Carbon County, Emery County, and the basin. Is look, we're going to bring them in. There is a word that you all hear called transition. So just a minute, let me ask you how you would all feel if I told you what you did for an occupation was just simply a transition to something better. Would you push back? Right? Let's let the market decide. Does that make sense? The market's going to push for affordable, reliable, clean. Why should we say, by the way, what you're working on so hard has to end? Just because. Doesn't matter if you get to clean, it still has to end. So I really like push back on that transition word because I just think it makes them feel not part of the team and not valuable. Wow, I'm just burning through my time, and I want to do some Q&A. So let's do a little Q&A if you want, and then you'll notice I haven't even gone to my notes. I can talk a really long time if you would like, but I'd also be happy to do some Q&A with you if that's possible or interested. And you've got another mic because I stole your mic.
Yes, for anyone who has a question, let's use the mic so we can hear it by everybody.
So, and while he's handing up the mic, should we do a pitch for the hike? We have not picked a date, but we have done a hike every year, and it's amazing how much more you can agree on when you are outside walking in the beautiful outdoors. There's been one exception. We started on a beautiful day and we ended in a torrid snowstorm, and it was fun though. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm Dave Holland, and I was on Timpanogos hike, and thank you, and I'm a constituent, and thank you so much for being here. Really appreciate it. And from my standpoint, I think one of the really most important things you've done, among many things, is the Conservative Climate Caucus. Could you tell us a little bit about what's transpired since you started it, and where's it heading?
Excellent. So, as you know, in the House, we like to do things in caucuses. And when we had this group out, this 25 out, we said, wow, if we have 25 people, we've got something here. And basically what I felt like was that Republicans were longing for a place to land on this. And that we needed to give them that landing place if we wanted them to be part of it. So we went back and we said, hey, let's form a caucus. This is the way we work. And I want you to know, we spent a lot of time on the name. You know what everybody said? If you use the word climate, Republicans will not associate with it. I knew that there were other organizations in Washington who had tried to do what we were doing, which is give Republicans a landing place. And they had used other names, the Roosevelt Caucus. You know, there were other names that they had used. Guess what? Nobody took them seriously. Because if you don't use the word climate, then people tend to say, you know, you're not serious. But we also wanted to designate that we're different and don't expect us to just totally agree with every method. So we're conservatives. And so Conservative Climate Caucus was born. It happens to work real well, CCC. And we went back and we started. And I thought, well, maybe we'll get these same 25 to join that went out to Utah. And imagine my delight and everybody around me, how pleased we were when quickly we announced it. And I remember my team saying as we were going to do the press conference, was getting closer and closer. Hey, we're up to 30 people now. Hey, we're up to 35 people. Hey, we're up to 40 people. And that number kept climbing. Most of these were Republicans who I didn't approach, but heard about it and approached me. Isn't that just amazing? Till today, it's grown to 85. And the reality of it is, I think there would be a lot more, but simply bandwidth of going and talking to members and telling them what it was and asking them to join. But a high percentage of those 85 have actually sought us out and say, hey, we want this. We want a place to land. We're tired of going to a town hall meeting and getting our teeth kicked in, right, on this issue. And we care. We care deeply about the earth. We're not showing it anyway. So now fast forward to today. As you know, I'm not going to be in the House next year. And that was concerning to me for the whole time that I've done this, is what happens to the caucus when John Curtis is gone. Really pleased to say that Mary Miller Meeks has accepted the chair position. We've called 5 vice chairs from around the country. And this thing is like, to me, it's like the business that the founder starts. And then when he steps aside, the new people come in and take it to a much higher level. If you hear these people talk about where they want to go with this, I think you're going to see this at a much higher level going forward, and super excited for it.
Hi there, Erica Markin. Thank you so much for being here today. And thank you for your leadership
Thanks,
on
Erica.
this. So when you mentioned, you know, letting the market decide, it just sparked me because it was really hard to watch the legislature this cycle kind of really backtrack hard. It felt like on doubling down on coal, and it's hard not to feel like, you know, if it goes against some kind of doctrine or some kind of deeply held belief that that we can't, I don't know how to put it, but it felt hypocritical to say that we believe in the market, but not in this scenario. So I would just love your insights
Yes.
and how do we continue the conversation and continue to shift it, I guess.
All right. So that's a super good question. And you all read in the paper a day or two ago about Rocky Mountain Power situation. And the reality of it is, and I'm going to use EVs too as an example, right? Like we've got these ideas and we like them so much, right, that we're going to just insist that this is the way we go. And sometimes we've got to be a little patient. We've got to let the market go. And I think one of the things I would say to you, it's hard, but let's go back to the principles of what did the legislature do that we liked this year? And have we stopped to thank them? Does that make sense? And they're going to do what is there anything that you could do to stop that legislation that they put forward? No. They're going to do what they're going to do. I'm going to bet that we come back here in a couple of years and we're going to see that not much came of that legislation, would be my bet. And in the meantime, there are some stumbling blocks. This is not moving as fast as many of you would like it to move. I'm willing to concede that, but it's moving, right? And you're gaining advocates in the Utah State Legislature, and they're getting smarter and wiser about this. And so, to some extent, I would say, I know it's hard. Double down on what you guys do so well. Go make friends. Does that make sense? Go educate. Go help people understand where these things go. And I predict that will actually have more impact than trying to undo any legislation that's frustrating to you. I know it's hard, right?
Thank you for being here. I'm Stephanie Russell. I'm Weber County's Economic Development Director and Government Relations Liaison. We're in the process here in the county of creating a renewable energy hub in our unincorporated West Weber corridor out by the Great Salt Lake. And my question to you is, what are your thoughts on hybridization of different technologies? That's really the approach that we've tried to take, is more of an economic development approach. We're creating jobs, we're creating technology, we're creating partnerships with the inland port, with Weber State, with the cities in the county. We started a methane harvesting program this past year, and we've had tremendous support from Congressman Moore's office. But the way that we've approached it, we kind of tried the top-down approach. Oh, we're going to do this. We're going to put a hydrogen facility out there. We're going to do that. And we got a lot of pushback. What we're finding is we're coming more up from the bottom, and we're looking at ways that we can support these different types of technologies from an economic development perspective. So we're showing, hey, we're creating jobs. Hey, we're in the process of creating environments for your children and your grandchildren. They're going to be sustainable out in this West Weber corridor. So what are your thoughts on that?
So by the way, I think everything that we've been talking about could be crystallized in what you've just said, right? Like, if you'll let me kind of play with your words a little bit. We tried to force it, and it would not be forced. We backed off. We found things that people are interested in. We found things that bring in jobs. We of all those people you're working with, which of them doesn't want to leave the earth better than they found it? They're literally following that principle, right? But you couldn't force them to get there. And I think that's a really good example, right? And what some of those things that you just clicked off are amazing. I mean, you could kind of slightly relabel those. Don't say this. Hope is there press here? And somebody would think, wow, what a liberal county. right? Does that make sense? But you're letting people choose. You're making them feel good about those decisions. They're market driven. They bring jobs. They bring cleaner air. They bring cleaner water. There's less emissions with all of those, and people like it from that perspective. But nobody, and I'll kind of come back to the same thing. It's like nobody wants this to be forced on them. They push back. They're forced.
Yeah. I think-
Okay. All right. I'm sorry. Yes, I will. If I'm invited back next year, I will answer your question. And so great to be with all of you.